Welcome back to our ongoing exploration of the Samkhya Karika. In this session, we're about to get into some of the most profound Karikas yet, the ones that detail the entire mechanism through which consciousness experiences the world. So, this is the fifth part of our Samkhya Karika series, where we'll be tackling Karikas 33 through 40. Now, these verses build on our last discussion about the instruments of experience, but even if you're just joining us today, the principles we're covering are absolutely foundational. So, we're facing that big philosophical question that Samkhya keeps pointing to. If Purusha, or pure consciousness, is just a passive witness, a non-doer, then how on earth does it actually experience this vibrant, chaotic, and multi-layered world? Well, as we're about to see, the answer lies in an incredibly sophisticated machinery of experience, a system that perceives, processes, and presents the world. Our journey today is going to start with the tools of perception, the inner and outer instruments. From there, we'll zoom in on the most critical instrument, the buddhi, or intellect. Then we'll look at what these instruments are actually experiencing, the world of objects and bodies, which will lead us to the concept of the subtle body that travels between lifetimes. So let's dive right in. First things first, we need to understand the instruments. Samkhya presents a highly structured cognitive system. Karikas 33 through 36 give us the blueprint for these instruments of knowing, splitting them into two distinct categories. Let's start with the 33rd Karika. Antakaranam trividam dashada bahyam trayasya vishayakyam sampratakalam bahyam trikalamabhyantaram karanam. This Karika lays out a really clear functional division. The inner instrument, the Antahakarana, is a trio of intellect, ego, and mind. The outer instruments are the 10 senses, but here's the critical distinction. Your outer instruments, like your eyes and ears, they only operate in the present moment. The inner instrument, though, it's like a time traveler. It processes memories from the past, perceives the present, and imagines the future. Now let's move to the next Karika, the 34th. Buddhi Indriyani, Desham Panchavishesha Vishayani. Bhagbhavati Shabdavishaya Sheshani tu Panchavishayani. This one gets a little more technical, but it's brilliant. It explains that our senses perceive both vishesha, which are specific, gross objects, and avishesha, the non-specific, subtle qualities. For example, you see a specific clay pot, that's vishesha, but you also perceive the underlying subtle element of earthiness, which is avishesha. You hear a specific musical note, but you also experience the subtle quality of sound itself. And now for the 35th Karika, which introduces a fantastic metaphor. Santahakarana buddhi sarvam vishayam avagahate yasmat, tasmat trividam karanam, dwari dwarani sheshani. And this just clearly lays out the hierarchy of perception. Information from the world comes in through the gates, the outer senses. But it's the gatekeeper, that inner trio of mind, ego, and intellect that processes it, makes sense of it, and makes a judgment. The senses are just passive receivers. The inner instrument is the active interpreter. So let's really lock this concept down. The gates are the 10 outer senses, bringing in raw data from the present moment. The gatekeeper is the inner trio of mind, ego, and intellect, which synthesizes this data with past memories and future possibilities. This difference is absolutely fundamental to understanding the Samkhya view of experience. The 36th Karika gives us another beautiful image to explain how all these different parts work together. Ete pradipakalpaha paraspara vilakshana guna visheshaha kritsnam purushasya artham prakasya buddhau prayachanti. So the key takeaway here is that all these instruments are compared to a lamp. Just as a lamp's wick, oil, and flame are all different, yet cooperate to produce a single light, all these inner and outer instruments work together. And what's their purpose? To illuminate the entire field of objects for Purusha, and to present this illuminated experience to the buddhi for final determination. It's all a coordinated effort for the sake of consciousness. This brings us to the most important of all the instruments, the buddhi. And as Karika 37 will reveal, it plays a fascinating, paradoxical role as the key to both our bondage and our freedom. This brings us to a really challenging question. If the intellect, the buddhi, is itself a product of nature, how can it possibly reveal the fundamental difference between nature and Purusha? How can a part of the system see beyond the system itself? The 37th Karika holds the profound answer. Sarvam pratyubabhogam yasmad purushasya sadhayati buddhish
Saivacha vishinashti punah. Pradhanapurushantaram sukshmam.
And here lies the deep insight. The Karika says that it's the buddhi that accomplishes all worldly experience for Purusha. It's the lens through which we live. And yet this very same instrument, when refined, is what allows us to discriminate between nature and pure consciousness. It is both the source of our bondage and the only means for our liberation. It's both the lock and the key to the cosmos. Now that we understand the cognitive mechanism, the Karikas turn their focus to the objects of experience. Verses 38 and 39 explain how these objects evolve from subtle potentials into the gross physical reality all around us. Here is the 38th Karika.
Tanmatranya visheshastebhyo bhutani panchapanchabhyah. Ete smruta visheshaha shanta ghorascha mudhascha.
This Karika explains the evolution of matter. It starts with the tanmatras, the subtle potentials of sound, touch, sight, taste, and smell. From these arise the 5 gross elements, things like earth and water. And crucially, our experience of these elements is never neutral. It's always colored by the 3 gunas, making things appear pleasant, painful, or deluding. Now for the complex 39th Karika, which distinguishes between different kinds of bodies. Sukshma matar pitrujaha saha prabhutais tridhash vishesha syuh. Sukshmastesham niyatam matar pitruja nivartante. This is a critical distinction. The Karika divides the specifics into 3 types: the subtle body, the physical body born of parents, and the gross elements themselves. And here's the key point. While the physical body is perishable, the subtle body is constant. It persists from one life to the next, setting the stage for our final concept. We now arrive at our final Karika, which formally introduces the vehicle of rebirth. This is Samkhya's mechanism for transmigration, explaining how our essential patterns and tendencies travel from one life to the next. Let's hear the final Karika, the 40th. Porvopannamasaktam niyatam, mahadadi sukshma paryantam, samsarati nirupabhogam, bhave radivasitam lingam. And this is the grand definition. The linga, or subtle body, has existed since beginningless time. It's constant and unattached to any single gross body. It's made of everything from the intellect down to the subtle elements. It wanders from birth to birth, and, this is critical, it doesn't experience anything itself. Purusha is the experiencer. The subtle body is just the carrier, loaded up with all our dispositions and karmic traces, the bhavas. So let's solidify this crucial concept. Think of the linga sharira, or subtle body, as an eternal hard drive. It carries the software of our karmic code, the bhavas, from one physical body to the next, ensuring that our patterns and dispositions continue their journey. All right, let's bring it all together. These 8 Karikas have given us a complete, elegant system that explains everything from a single moment of perception all the way to the grand cycle of rebirth. Here it is, step by step. First, the senses, the gates, gather information from the present moment. Second, the inner instruments, the gatekeeper, process this information across time. Third, the intellect makes sense of it all, enabling experience and, eventually, providing liberating knowledge. Fourth, the traces of our actions are stored in the subtle body, the linga. And finally, this subtle body carries those dispositions forward through the cycle of rebirth. And this leaves us with a final, deep question to reflect on. If this subtle body, this carrier of our personality, our memories, our karma, is not ultimately the real us, if it's just the vehicle and we are the passenger, the silent Purusha, then what is the nature of our true identity? Who are we beyond the story that the subtle body carries? Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of the Samkhya Karika. If these ideas resonated with you, your support through a like, comment, or subscription really helps us continue these deep dives. We look forward to exploring the next set of verses with you.